This is CBC Here and Now.
While Queen Elizabeth was laid to rest in faraway London today, her life and legacy were also remembered right here in the province. That's just ahead.
There's more than a glimmer of hope that the labor strife in this city may soon come to an end. I'll have that story coming up.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We have a lot of local news tonight, including local reaction to the death of Queen Elizabeth II, and that's where we begin. The funeral of Queen Elizabeth took place today in London, with people watching the live-streamed service and procession across the globe. Here in St. John's, a service for the Queen was held in the Anglican Cathedral. Here Now's Henrika Wilhelm was there.
Queen Elizabeth's final goodbye. A ceremony filled with pomp and circumstance took place in London today for the late monarch and head of the Commonwealth. Here in St. John's, her reign was remembered, and her universal impact on people worldwide, and right here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
For perhaps most, if not all of us, the Queen was indeed present for all of our lives. Her portrait adorns our walls and our wallets. Watching her Christmas messages on the television was as traditional as opening the presents and eating the turkey dinner. Here in Newfoundland and Labrador and in this capital city, we drive down Elizabeth Avenue and we study at the QE2 library.
The province's Lieutenant Governor remembered the Queen's life as a monarch.
This remarkable woman, who has been a constant in our lives too, will be dearly missed. In fact, for the majority of us, Her Majesty was the only Queen we knew.
And while the service was held at the Anglican Cathedral in St. John's, members of other congregations and faiths were invited to speak to her legacy.
Everybody is affected, and it doesn't matter, all over the world. And, Queen has been an icon and has been a figurehead for over 70 years. So obviously she has touched a lot of people, a lot of lives.
Queen Elizabeth died on September 8th, and her funeral today concluded 2 weeks of remembrance across the globe and right here in the province. With her death, Charles automatically became king, but it will be a while before his official coronation in the spring or summer. Henrika Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, across the country, Canadians woke up early to pay their respects to the Queen. Some gathered at provincial ceremonies and in theatres. Others cooked an English breakfast and watched the funeral from home. The CBC's Kayla Hounsell shows us how Canadians are remembering.
It was something 96-year-old Pearl Kavanagh just could not miss.
And it's very sad, and I'm very touched. And I don't know if I'll ever get over it.
Born in Guyana, then a British colony, in the same year as Queen Elizabeth, she feels a special connection to the monarch.
She was like a sister to me, even though I've never met her.
Her niece moved to tears.
I remember, Mom.
Because the Anglican ceremony so closely resembled that of her mother's. She prepared an English breakfast fit for a queen.
Well, this represents our British heritage, and this is one way of being close to the Queen at this time.
In living rooms and kitchens across the country, Canadians woke early to mourn their monarch.
It's emotional, and it's history.
In Newfoundland, Carla Conway has been a collector of royal memorabilia since she was a child.
I felt it was the need to be involved in some small way to watch it, because she was our queen.
At this historic theater in St. John, New Brunswick, visited by then Prince Charles in 1996, people came together to watch.
An opportunity that once in a lifetime to see a funeral of this stature on the big screen.
In Halifax, a multi-faith service open to the public.
I met her and had the chance to speak to her, so it touches my heart, and I just feel we need to be here today.
And a 21-gun salute. A nationwide send-off that included both pomp and pageantry and quiet moments of mourning.
No, I should say goodbye to her, but she will still be reigning in my heart.
With some families finding it difficult to let go of a queen that felt like family. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
Pretty nice start to the week this week. We do have some cloud cover around, a few showers as well, but overall not bad. Nice big ridge of high pressure in place that's dominating the weather up across the big land and is going to be the story really as we head through at least tonight and into tomorrow. But there's a look at some of those showers popping up for the eastern portions of the island, some cloud cover as well, but overall a fairly quiet night. Now, the fact that we have that ridge of high pressure in place means that we are going to see some patchy frost tonight. It did just disappear, but we'll likely see some patchy frost across the western portion of the island through the early morning hours tomorrow, and then again on Wednesday morning. There you can see that up across the big land. Your temperature is going to be a lot cooler, but Environment Canada does have a frost advisory in place again early Tuesday and Wednesday morning. Temperatures somewhere between -2 and +3 in those low-lying areas, particularly across the island. Now, the next thing is we turn our attention towards the tropics. Tropical storm, or rather Hurricane Fiona on the radar. I'll get into the full details coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. There's cautious optimism in Mount Pearl tonight following weeks of labor disruption. A tentative agreement has been reached between striking municipal workers and City Hall. But as Here and Now's Terry Roberts reports, tension remains over back-to-work strategy.
City leaders in Mount Pearl were in an upbeat mood today, smiling and posing for photos following a wreath-laying ceremony honoring the late Queen Elizabeth II, hopeful they've turned a corner in the long and sometimes tense strike. City and union leaders have found common ground. Conciliators have helped bridge the gap. Now it's up to workers to either accept or reject. The mayor was not offering any details of the proposed agreement, but believes both sides are eager for an end to the labor strife.
The workers want to get back to work, and naturally council does as well in a normal fashion. So we're looking forward to having our services restored and working with our employees going forward. Typically, a tentative agreement is quickly followed by a ratification vote. But union officials are on edge and the situation remains fragile, likely a sign of the tension and rhetoric that's dominated the 10-plus weeks since the strike began on July 7th. This union leader says there won't be a vote until the city offers an acceptable return-to-work plan.
The city did indicate that they were not ready to have their workers come back to work just yet, so we're not quite sure what that means. All we know is that we can't bring a ratification vote to our membership without a completed return to work.
So big questions remain. Will hockey and figure skating return soon? Will swimmers be disturbing the water in this pool? And will municipal services be fully restored? Those questions are now in the hands of workers like this. The union is staying neutral. No recommendation for the vote. Why?
We believe that there's a large piece of our agreement that needs to be discussed, and the membership should make that decision. Despite the picket lines, the most basic of municipal services have been maintained by the city's 40-plus management staff. Both sides have been engaged in a public relations back and forth, with the union standing firm on a pledge to fight the city's attempts to slash benefits for new employees, and the city saying it has to hold the line on spending as tax revenues decline. We had to come to an agreement that was good for the city of Mount Pearl as well as good for our employees, and we'll leave it in the hands of the union now to get the ratification done. It seems there's been a lot of roadblocks along the way, but we've managed to overcome. We've got ourselves to a place where we think we can go back to the membership, and that's where we need to be. So while it appears all sides want to return to labor harmony, some twists and turns in the path remain. Terry Roberts, CBC News, Mount Pearl.
And we did learn late this afternoon that all sides in this dispute will meet this evening to try to hammer out a return to work strategy, which would then trigger a ratification vote. We'll continue to follow this story on Here and Now, as well as on our website, cbc.ca/nl. Well, the Red Cross is assisting 7 people from 2 families after a house fire in St. John's over the weekend. Firefighters were called to Drugget Place in Shea Heights around 2:30 Saturday afternoon. A house was engulfed in flames and the fire caused smoke damage to an attached home. A vehicle was also destroyed, but no one was injured. The Red Cross is helping with emergency accommodations, food, and clothing. The cause of the fire remains under investigation. Well, people gathered in Bannerman Park in St. John's yesterday calling for changes to how immigrants are treated. The group is looking for equal rights. Here's what some people at the rally had to say.
Our immigration system is designed to exploit migrants, and we're calling for change. We're calling for regularization of undocumented peoples. We're calling for full and permanent immigration status for all. Things like we're calling for accessible healthcare for all. We're calling for status overall because there are many more rights that migrants are denied. I'm a migrant student. I came here with a study permit. I lived in res for 2 years, but then we were all asked to leave residence because of COVID. And at that point, I was bouncing between houses. There was a point where I lived in hotels for 3 months. I was unhoused. I had $1 left on my credit card. I couldn't eat food for a while. I had to make sure I was rationing my food. I've gotten full-time job offers, but I cannot accept them because I'm a migrant student. I'm not allowed to work full-time, even though we pay exorbitant tuitions. I've also been in places where I'm the only migrant and have seen all forms of hate. And we're just calling for awareness, but we're also calling for change.
They come here, study here, work here. They should have the exact same rights and privileges of all workers, and they should be documented and allowed permanent status as soon as they come, especially in this province where we're really desperate for workers and for making sure that we have a workforce in the future. If workers can come here, they should be able to enjoy all the rights and privileges that all workers deserve.
4 friends are cycling across Canada to bring awareness to the benefits of regular exercise for people living with Parkinson's. The Spinning Wheels Tour kicked off in BC and crossed into every Canadian province before breaking 8,000 kilometers later in Topsail Beach. Here Now's Henrika Wilhelm was there when they crossed the finish line on Saturday.
How does it feel to be here?
You know what? This is wow, it feels so good. I knew we were going to get here. There was never a doubt we were going to get here, but to actually be standing here and to dip our front tires in the ocean, this is the best feeling I think I've ever had. It's amazing.
We had setbacks, we had challenges. There were times when I thought, is this it? Are we going to advance? But if any one of us thought that in solitude, the group was always going to go on. We were always going to go.
Steve and I both have Parkinson's disease. You know what? I sat on my couch for 2 years feeling sorry for myself because I had Parkinson's disease. I shut myself off to all my friends and family. But that's changed, right? Community is so important, exercise is so important. Parkinson's disease is really tough, but combining those 2 things makes it just a little bit better. From British Columbia, right up until yesterday, right? We've heard stories from people who have said, oh, you know what, my brother-in-law has it, my father-in-law has it, I have it. We've talked to people who have been diagnosed less than a week into their Parkinson's journey, and we've made those connections, and we're staying connected with them. You know what? When you have Parkinson's, I think sometimes you think you're alone, and we want people with Parkinson's to know that they're not alone. That even if it's just us, we're there, and we're there for them, and they're there for us, and it's an amazing feeling.
Now to another impressive race for a good cause. The 42nd annual Terry Fox Run for Hope took place at Quidi Vidi Lake yesterday. The event raises millions of dollars for cancer research, including work that happens right here in this province. And most people who took part were running for a reason. Take a look.
December 27th, when that comes up, I will have 10 years of being cancer-free. So I know it wasn't the first year, but a couple years after I was diagnosed, I decided that I was going to come to this, and I got my mom, who always comes with me, and I realized that I could be a part of Terry's team, which is cancer survivor, so I come every year now. The cancer I had was very similar to Terry's, so he had an osteosarcoma, so his cancer was in the bone. I had a synovial sarcoma, which was also in my right leg, and that was in the muscle, so it was a little different than Terry's. But I mean, had we not had cancer research and advanced so much in technology, I could have also lost my leg, or I could not be here right now. So it's very, very important that people donate and continue to contribute to cancer research. I think the first year was the most important. My doctor had told me that if my cancer was going to come back, it would most likely come back in the first year. So I had to, get scans and stuff every so often for every 3 months, and then that eventually went to 6 months, and eventually went to a year. So the first year was really the most important. And then when I got to 5 years, I was actually able to be discharged, so that was really, really exciting too. So every year is just another great year that I don't have to deal with it anymore, so it's awesome.
Around Quidi Vidi Lake, we've been planning for this for months, and we're going to get a bunch of people coming down here to the lake to take part in the run, and also to raise money for cancer research. I'm originally from Nigeria, and I moved here a few years ago to do my PhD. Coincidentally, my PhD is actually funded by money from the Terry Fox Research Institute, looking for better ways to be able to track pediatric leukemia. And so the money is going to research, and I'm involved in the research myself.
He's obviously an icon. I think he's one of the most important people in Canadian history. I mean, considering what he did, I personally would never be able to run across the country. I know he didn't get to do it all, but I know that if he could have, he would have. And I'm sure at that time he had no idea that he was going to have such an impact and continue to still 42 years later. Like, the amount of millions and millions of dollars that he's after contributing is insane, but in such a good way.
Well, Hurricane Fiona, that's a name you will get to know this week. We're going to talk about the impacts right now affecting Dominican Republic, but it is headed towards the Atlantic provinces this weekend. I'll get into the details coming up.
Okay, time for a look at the weather. And Ashley, you said earlier that we're going to get to know Hurricane Fiona over the next few days. What can you tell us about what's happening so far?
Yeah, this name really will be the focus, I'd say, over the next 5 days or so. So let's take a look at what's going on right now. Where is Hurricane Fiona? Let's take a look at that there. So it's actually affecting Dominican Republic right now, still bringing catastrophic rains to parts of Puerto Rico as well. But hurricane force winds sustained at 150 kilometers per hour and wind gusts at about 165. So right now is a Category 1 hurricane. But as we head through the next 3 to 4 days, the hurricane is in fact going to strengthen to a major hurricane, which is a Category 3 with those winds on Thursday morning at about 205 kilometers per hour. So this is where we start to pay attention to the forecast, because this is where the track may head a little bit further north. So I'm just going to show you some of the steering factors for Fiona. So this may just look like a bunch of colors to you, but what it is these oranges here are where we're seeing ridges of high pressure, and then the blues and the greens are where we're seeing troughs of low pressure. That's what meteorologists use to determine where storms move. In this case, there's Fiona right there. We've got this blocking, essentially, ridge of high pressure. Over the next couple of days, the ridge weakens a little bit, which basically allows the storm to head a little bit further north, giving it that track to head north. Now, what we're also watching is a trough of low pressure, this blue here, which is going to pull it further north, and then eventually, it looks like at this point, somewhere in the Atlantic provinces through Friday night into Saturday. So this is what we're watching as far as the steering forecast goes. Now, the model's doing a pretty good job at that at the moment. This is the spaghetti plot. So this is a bunch of different forecast models that run the numbers to see where the forecast track is. So it's pretty good agreement that it's going to head north, and then as it heads towards the Atlantic provinces, this is where things become uncertain. This cone here, which I'm sure you've heard me talk about when we talk about these tropical systems, is the cone of uncertainty. The chance of it making landfall somewhere within that cone by the time we get into Saturday morning. So definitely going to keep an eye on that. You can see some of the track showing it into southeastern portions of Nova Scotia, others towards Newfoundland and Labrador. So definitely a storm that we'll have to watch for the next couple of days. What do we know right now? Not a whole lot. It is still 5 days out, but what we do know is the timing, potentially late Friday into Saturday. As far as heavy rainfall, with storms, with tropical storms, the heaviest rainfall is always on along the track or to the left of the track. That's where you see all of the moisture. As far as strong winds go, the strongest winds will always be, again, along the track and then to the right of the system as well. And then as far as high surf goes or storm surge, we always see that along the track. So if we do, it'll be along the south coast in that time frame. Don't know amounts at the moment, but the good thing is we do have a number of days to get prepared for this. So use that time to prepare your property. No need to panic at this point. No need to panic at all, but prepare your property. Put some light things away if you haven't done so already. Branches, if they're weak, cut them, trim them. Make a plan, get a kit. You should have about 36 to 72 hours really of supplies just in case, and then also stay informed. So keep an eye on the forecast, which I will do every night for you and on social media as well. So definitely something to look into over the next couple of days. Taking a look at the temperatures right now, not too bad, 15, 16 degrees, which is normal for around this time of year, but we're looking at lots of cloud cover across the island, some sun peeking out, and then not a whole lot happening up across Labrador, just a few showers in the forecast at the moment. And we'll see that generally continue as we head through the evening hours tonight. Potential for some patchy frost as well as we see those clearing skies. Temperatures pretty chilly, -2 to 6 degrees. The warmest will be in eastern areas of the island. And then as we head through the day tomorrow, we're looking at those temperatures in the teens again. May see a few showers in and around. The winds either light or out of the north around 10 to 15 kilometers per hour. And then up across the Big Land, you're looking at sunshine and temperatures in the teens as well. So we'll take a look at the longer range forecast when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, the 10th annual Tickle Swim was virtual this weekend, meaning participants can complete their 5-kilometer swim in a pond or pool rather than typically crossing from Topsail Beach to Bell Island. Well, 10 tickles later, founder Sheila O'Leary says the goal is still to raise awareness for mental health.
The Mun Insurance Tickle Swim is a 5.1-kilometer swim from Portugal Cove, St. Phillips to beautiful Bell Island, and it's all in aid of mental health services and programming. All the funds and awareness go towards Canadian Mental Health Association Newfoundland and Labrador. First swim was in 2013, and it came from a quiet kind of personal bucket list item that I had to swim a channel, and my good friend T.A. Loeffler, who is an extraordinary adventurer, I mentioned it to her quietly, and as soon as I did, I knew I had to do it. It was going to become a reality. So she was fantastic in supporting me, getting the right people in place to kind of help me train, and it was something, and I thought, I've swam in this area before, and I knew it was possible that other people had done it. Mental health is something that's very deeply personal for many people, and I have a family member who is affected by mental illness, but we all are impacted by mental health, and I thought, if I'm going to raise money and awareness, it's definitely going to be for mental health.
I was a family doctor for a long time. In a day, at least 25 to 30% of my patients were there for refills or a new diagnosis of a mental health issue, mostly depression and anxiety. Some people deal with stress in life. Not everybody. You don't have to be a runner, you don't have to be any special athlete. You could go for a walk, a short walk in nature, a short hike, go down to the beach and look at the water and throw rocks in. Anything that makes a person feel more relaxed to face the day. Because days are stressful as physicians. It's just the way it is. Or any job, not just ours, right?
Of course, some of them thought I was cracked in the early days, but you know what? Here we are, 10 years later, with a fantastic event that really challenges people mentally and physically, and does good for the community.
He said, "You do a lot of knitting." I said, "If I'm sitting down, I'm knitting." So he thought that was funny.
For the fact that the last year has been by herself. It was amazing, just amazing to watch.
Well, the coverage continues. A royal watcher and true collector shares her thoughts on today's funeral. You'll also hear more about one of King Charles' passion projects and its connection to this province. That's ahead. Britons and the world said goodbye to Queen Elizabeth today. Among the countless people watching the funeral was St. John's resident Carla Conway. Now, she's a passionate royal watcher and has been cultivating an impressive collection of Queen Elizabeth memorabilia over the past 5 decades. The CBC's Chris O'Neill-Yates visited Conway's home today as she watched the procession and reflected on what the Queen meant to her.
I felt it was the need to be involved in some small way to watch it because she was our queen. The only queen, of course, that I've ever known, but also just to show respect for the fact that she had served for 70 plus years. Will never be seen again. It was history in the making in so many levels. She's been there for everything. I mean, there's been a lot of turmoil in those 70 years coming out of post-war and economics and the very changing world in general. It's different, very different from 70 years ago, and taking on the role of a female taking a very strong lead in the world that was predominantly male.
Where does your passion for the crown and the royal family come from?
I grew up with it, truly, from pieces in my collection that I received from my grandmother. My grandmother and I, in 1973, with the marriage of the Princess Royal, I was, it wasn't a day of, you're going to be able to be off school officially, but my mother said, yes, if you want to be with your grandmother and watch the wedding, yes. So that was the first wedding that I watched. It's always been there. It's not something that, and some of my collection, I have a collection, and some of my collection has come from my grandmother's house. I cannot think of a time that it wasn't part of my life.
What do you think of the send-off she got today and what she would have made of that?
With a sense of humor, it might have been like, well, they did it correctly. They did it the way it was supposed to be done. And in a lot of ways, I think it was done so well, but it was mostly for us, more so than for herself, to actually have the opportunity for we as, not to use the word subjects, but we as people of the countries that are with the Queen is our head of state. This is, it was given to us, very much part of it.
Well, of course, King Charles III, the then Prince of Wales, visited St. John's just a few months ago. And during that visit, he stopped by Government House to meet with local craftspeople to talk about a shared and perhaps surprising passion, wool. King Charles is the founder of an organization called the Campaign for Wool, which aims to educate people about the natural fiber and its versatility. And you may recall he was even presented with a wool bust of himself and the late Queen Elizabeth. 88-year-old Yvonne Shepherd was there for that visit. Not only did she meet the future king, the knitter from Bristol's Hope is also featured in a national campaign promoting wool. Here's Shepherd's story, produced by filmmaker Peter Walsh, The Knitters and the King.
I've lived in Bristol's Hope for 72 years. In the mornings, I'm usually in the kitchen and I'm knitting. I always had something on needles. I've been knitting over 70 years. I'd say over 80 really, because I was only very, very small when I started to knit. I can remember first knitting little things from my dolls. My name is Yvonne Shepherd and I'm 88 years old, and I started knitting when I was 6 or 7 years old. Well, I came here to start teaching school when I was only a teenager, and I taught school in a little one-room school up the road. I didn't have to ask my parents for anything. I lived on what I made, $50 a month. We met and started dating. Tall, dark and handsome. When you got married, you stayed home and raised your family. There's no daycares then. Had 7 children, 4 boys and 3 girls. One morning got up ready to go to work, put on his coveralls and just dropped down on the floor. Had a massive heart attack. 56 years old. He was the only one with bringing in income, so I had to do something. You just got to go on and do the best you can, haven't you? I saw a little ad in the paper that they were looking for knitters, and you had to send in a sample of your work. So I sent in a sample of my knitting, and they sent it back with a big box of wool and a pattern and telling me what they wanted knit. And I've been knitting for them ever since, so it really helped me get through a difficult time in my life. 33 years I've been knitting for Nonia.
Nonia is a not-for-profit which was established over 100 years ago, Newfoundland Outport Nursing and Industrial Association. Here in St. John's we put together orders for the knitters, wool and patterns that we want them to knit, and we send it to them wherever they are in the province. They knit the goods at home, package them up and mail them back to us. When the government took over healthcare, Nonia continued as an industrial operation, and the money was then really important household income for the women. One woman joked about having knit her stove because she was able to buy a stove with the money she earned knitting for Nonia. Wool is very warm. It's naturally wind and water resistant. If you take care of a sweater, it will last you the rest of your life. And when it's reached the end of its useful life, it's biodegradable.
Well, it's durable and it's soft and nice to wear. I would sooner work with the wool than with cotton or anything else. There's something I like about it.
Oh, it's wonderful. I gave him a brief introduction to Nonia, and then he started asking the knitters about what they were knitting, how long they'd been knitting.
He was charming and very polite, I found, and he just looked at it and sort of sized it up, and he said, a lot of work went into that. I said, yes, a lot of work with that went into that. He said, you do a lot of knitting. I said, if I'm sitting down, I'm knitting. So he thought that was funny. That's me. I have 14 children altogether, 7 from my first marriage and 7 stepchildren. So Mother's Day is a busy day because they all contact me on Mother's Day. The children were all grown and everyone had all the knitted stuff they wanted, so knitting for Nonia worked out wonderful for me. And I still enjoy my knitting.
The state funeral for Queen Elizabeth drew presidents and kings, princes and prime ministers, and crowds who massed along the streets of London to honor her and her 70 years on the throne. The CBC's Thomas Dagla was there.
It was a day planned for decades, but also one that many in Britain could never imagine. As Queen Elizabeth's coffin draped in the royal standard was brought to Westminster Abbey, it all became real. London hasn't seen this many foreign dignitaries assembled in the same place for generations. And the royal family has never mourned a monarch who served for this long.
We come to this house of God, to a place of prayer, to a church where remembrance and hope are sacred duties. Here, where Queen Elizabeth was married and crowned, we gather from across the nation, from the Commonwealth, and from the nations of the world, to mourn our loss.
Former British prime ministers have all said they counted on Elizabeth's wise words. 15th in the Queen's reign, Liz Truss only got one audience before the monarch's passing.
Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me.
As emotional and symbolic as the funeral was, some of the most striking scenes were still to come. With the gun carriage transporting the Queen's coffin across central London, her family followed. Crowds lined the route to say their final goodbyes as Elizabeth left London one last time. The hearse taking the motorway for Windsor, where the Queen lived as a child and again through the pandemic. The 5-kilometer-long walk leading to the castle served as the backdrop as locals who considered her a neighbor and royal fans from abroad all came to view the Queen's coffin. Carefully carried up the west steps of St. George's Chapel and into the committal service.
We have come together to commit into the hands of God the soul of his servant Queen Elizabeth.
The Dean of Windsor led the service. The Queen knew him and this 15th century Gothic church where she came to worship. The same place she witnessed weddings and the funeral of her beloved husband just last year. None of those moments were like this one. As the royal jeweler removed the ornate instruments of state, the monarch's orb and scepter and the imperial state crown, it signaled the end of the era of Queen Elizabeth II. King Charles watched with his time as monarch only beginning. His reign won't eclipse his mother's, and this day reminded everyone of its magnitude. The Queen's final resting place is next to that of her late husband, Prince Philip. This place has seen 1,000 years of royal history, and this moment is as significant as any. Thomas Dagla, CBC News, Windsor, England.
Well, the funeral for the Queen was officially marked in Canada's capital. A national commemorative ceremony was held in Ottawa. The CBC's Marina von Stackelberg has that story.
On a chilly, rainy afternoon, a solemn parade makes its way past Parliament Hill. Michael and Paula Webster are among hundreds who showed up to pay their respects. They're visiting from the UK and wish they could have been in London for the service there.
It's very sad. It's the end of an era.
Yeah, we've lost our mother.
Yeah, it's quite emotional.
Canadians who don't have close ties to the monarchy still wanted to be here to pay tribute.
I guess she's like a grandmother to everyone in Canada, more or less, in a way. So she's always there. You forget that she's human too. And then one day you realize that she's not here anymore. So it's a bit of a shock to a lot of people that I know.
At Christ Church Cathedral, leaders arrived for a special service. From different political stripes, they sat side by side in pews. As a choir sang the same hymn from the Queen's coronation in 1953, honoring her 70 years as Canada's head of state.
The Queen, her gentleness, her ability to emotionally connect with the common people, her desire to make the world cleaner and safer are truths she carries with her now into the great land of souls.
Former Governor General Adrian Clarkson gave an address on behalf of Canadians.
The life and reign of Elizabeth II has been witness to our struggle, our efforts as Canadians to become what we are meant to be: the true, the North, the free.
And former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney for the Government of Canada.
During her very first visit in 1951, she noted, "From the moment when I set foot at first on Canadian soil, the feeling of strangeness went, for I knew myself to be not only amongst friends, but amongst fellow countrymen."
Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, I talked about Hurricane Fiona a little bit earlier in the show, and the storm made landfall over Dominican Republic today, and it's expected to intensify as it continues on its northward path in the Atlantic Ocean.
Yes, the storm is still hitting parts of Puerto Rico a day after reaching the island, and the governor is calling the damage there catastrophic. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh has more.
At first light, the first attempts at cleanup after winds packing 140 kilometers an hour swept the island, scattering trees and power lines, initially knocking out power to more than 3 million people. While flooding from up to 76 centimeters of rain in some places wiped out critical roads and connections, including this bridge installed after Hurricane Maria. Hospitals evacuated, while many people fled their homes. We're here because the house is in a flood zone and it's not in very good condition, says Indua Correa Gonzalez, in a shelter with his mother. I'm worried because it's an old house and it needs repairs. We'll see what happens. Damage, injuries are just starting to be assessed. It will take days to fully restore power on an island still recovering from 2017's Hurricane Maria, which struck 5 years ago this week, killing more than 3,000 people and wiping out the power grid. Officials say lessons were learned there. Emergency provisions have been stashed around the island, including water. Hundreds of thousands are currently without. Still, by early assessments, the damage won't be as bad as 2017.
We're basically responding at this point. The next step will be recovery. We're not there yet.
That's not to say it's not severe. Flooding along the Guanibo River is already higher than 2017, up 5 meters in just 24 hours.
Unfortunately, the situation in Puerto Rico is not good and not looking to improve until later today when these bands finally start to pull away.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency is coordinating relief in the American territory. Still, Fiona is far from done, also making landfall in the Dominican Republic. The hurricane expected to only pick up power as it tracks north towards Bermuda later this week. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Yeah, so needless to say, definitely keeping an eye on the forecast over the next couple of days. But until we get there, it's actually going to be fairly quiet. Ridge of high pressure the story through Tuesday. That'll move off, allowing some moisture to move in as we head into Wednesday. So we're looking at a bit of unsettled conditions through the day, pretty much right across the board. Even as we get into Thursday, an area of low pressure will head to the north. And then that will continue through the afternoon on Friday. We may even see some snow in the forecast for Lab West as we head through the afternoon on Friday, and then that'll head towards Labrador. Now, the system Fiona, what is Fiona or left of Fiona by the time we get into Sunday morning, looks like as it becomes extratropical and eventually extratropical really, there's a chance we could see some snow for a good chunk of Labrador through the day on Sunday. So not only are we going to keep an eye on the tropical impacts, but we're also potentially going to be talking about snow as well. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that one. Taking a look at the forecast for your Wednesday, temperatures are actually going to start to warm up as we head through the day. So into the teens, mid-teens for the most part, even up across the Big Land. 19 degrees in Cartwright for your Wednesday, and then 17 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Taking a look at the forecast for Thursday, warmer even more so, could reach the 20s again in some areas through central along the west coast. But overall, those temperatures will be in the high teens, with the winds picking up a bit on Thursday and then again staying unsettled with that chance of showers. That's the story up across Labrador as well. Happy Valley Goose Bay will hover around 19 degrees as your daytime high, and Nain around 12. So the long range forecast actually looking like we are going to see some warming, not by much, but into the 20s, 18 or 20 degrees, but things will get progressively more unsettled as we head through the weekend. So Friday, at this point, some rain, and then wind and rain on Saturday. Exactly how much or what is going to happen is what we need to figure out at this point, but definitely keep an eye on the forecast. As far as central Newfoundland goes, you're looking at that similar, little bit of a warm up anyway, 21 degrees back down on Saturday with the wind and the rain, and then same thing for western Newfoundland. So temperatures actually will dip a little bit by the time we get to that point, and even through the overnight on Wednesday as well. We'll say goodbye to the chance of frost, at least anyway. For eastern Labrador, you're looking at a few showers for your Thursday, and then Friday we're getting back down into the single digits as the overnight lows, and this is when we start talking about the potential for some snow in the mix on Friday for you in Lab West. And then Saturday, mix of sun and cloud and some sunshine as well. Or rather some showers as well. Take a look at this great shot. This is some saltfish drying in Fogo. Charles shared that great shot with us. Thank you so much. If you have any weather photos you would like to share with us, send them to Facebook, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Oh, that's a great shot. I'm kind of sad I never got out to Fogo this summer.
This summer.
It would have been so nice to take a trip up there.
I know we talked about how we're going to make this summer so great.
Yes.
Didn't do anything.
So many things to do, so little time.
So true.
Well, that's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great evening.
Good night.